never exceed 25 pages.
There you go. I know.
She coming?
Yeah.
Sorry. All right, thank you. Today is April 25th. This is a meeting of the Meridian Township Planning Commission. I now call this meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is the roll call of the commission members. First of all, Commissioner McConnell.
Present.
Commissioner Hendrickson is no longer a member of this commission. It's a blank seat. Commissioner Primo.
Present.
Commissioner Cordill.
Present.
Commissioner Shrewsbury gave advance notice she would not be able to attend tonight. Commissioner Richards.
Here.
I am the chair, Commissioner Bloomer. I am present. Commissioner Snyder.
Present.
And Vice Chair Commissioner Tresize.
Present.
And we have Director Schmidt, Chief of the Staff. All right, very good. So the next item on the agenda is public remarks. We have these green cards filled out by two people who've submitted them. That would be from Lynn Page and Neil Bolby. Do you folks want to speak now or during a particular item on the agenda? Both. One or the other, we'll ask you to pick.
Go ahead, Glenn. I'd like to address a public hearing.
Wait for the public issue to come up? All right, that's fine.
How do I get the projector on?
Mr. Bowlby, let me stop you for a second, please.
Yep.
I want to advise you to keep your comments under the within 3-minute time period, and give us your name and address for the record, please, sir.
So I'm not able to use this?
Oh,
It's not a projector.
Yeah.
Well,
It's got overhead.
Okay,
Just give it a second.
yep, fine, sorry. Okay, so while I'm waiting, let's see, there's the Neil Bolby, 6020 Beechwood in Hazlet. And thank you, Commissioners, for the opportunity to speak to you. It's been a long time since I've been up here. I don't do Zoom meetings very well, or I haven't done. But I'll start my remarks by saying that it's time for the review of the 2017 master plan. Every 5 years by state ordinance, state law, the master plan has to be reviewed. And I know there's at least one planning commissioner here that was involved in the update of the 2010 master plan that was supposed to commence in 2015, and it took 2 years to do that. It wasn't until 2017 that the current master plan took effect. And so I didn't notice, I looked through all your agendas for this year and I haven't seen any mention of addressing the master plan, which is up for review this year. It's been 5 years since the last plan was enacted. But a few things that I'd like to see in it, I'd like you to think about, is more advocacy for affordable housing. I know we've got a project there behind Whole Foods, but that's something that's been an ongoing need in the township. I'd also like to see some more proactive measures to promote aging in place. And one of the ways that this could be accomplished would be for people, especially seniors, who find that they need to make modifications to their home to give them some sort of a break on building permits and other permits that are needed for renovations to promote them being able to age in home. And also more commercial and retail in MUPUDs. So MUPUD has been around a long time, and I know there's at least one member on the commission that was around when Hannah Farms was developed. And when that was brought before the board, they envisioned a beautiful community of retirees from MSU, single-family housing, apartments, townhouses, lots of commercial, a self-contained community. And we've seen what happened to that. Hannah Farms is basically now student housing. One of the problems is that there's no real defined amount of commercial that should be commercial retail that should be in an MUPUD. It's supposed to be a place where people don't have to get in their car to go do a lot of things, that a lot of things should be there. And I see nods of head. Yes, you agree. One of the problems is what I refer to as residential creep. So here's a depiction of the Village of Okemos project. When it was first presented to the Planning Commission, it was 23% by square feet commercial. And when it got to the Township Board, that commercial had reduced to 17.9%. And after an amendment in 2020, that reduced to 8.6% of the total square feet. And now the current one is only 8.5% in square feet. So the Township Board is responsible in the end for making the final decision, but they take a lot of guidance from the Planning Commission. And so the other thing here...
Mr. Bowlby, excuse me, sir. I don't mean to interrupt, I'm sorry, but I want to make sure you understand public comments at this point in the meeting are generally limited to 3 minutes.
Yes, and I see 26 seconds left.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yep,
I'm
okay.
sorry I interrupted you.
So I'll reclaim a few more seconds
There you go.
there. I'll try and get through this one fast. It doesn't look like it's... Oh, there we go. Showing different projects from 2015, Red Cedar Flats was 9.4%. Capstone was 5.4. That was the third part of that. But then it dropped down precipitously, and it's kind of come back a little bit. And I'll bring this one back again. You can't see the numbers because I'm putting my finger in there. It's only 7.5% commercial. So I'm hoping that you can address this in the master plan and encourage and maybe even amend the master plan to have some sort of minimum standard for commercial and retail. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other members of the public who wish to address the public comments section now, or do you want to reserve your comments for a particular item on the agenda? No? All right, thank you. Then the next item for our agenda is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve? A motion by Commissioner Cordell, seconded by Commissioner Tresides. All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? No opposition. The agenda for today is approved. Next item is number 5, approval of the minutes of the April 11 regular meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from that meeting?
Move to adopt.
Moved by Commissioner McConnell. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Snyder. Is there any comment or corrections to the previous minutes? Seeing none, then I'll call for a voice vote. All in favor of approving the minutes from the previous meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? None. The minutes from the April 11 meeting are approved. Finally, item number 6, we have communications. There is a letter in the package that the commissioners all received from Mr. Timothy Mowers regarding item MUPUD 22-014, and that was given to the commissioners for their review prior to tonight's meeting. And I believe we have a letter from Lynn Page that was given to us at the beginning of this meeting by Director Schmidt. Is that correct?
Correct. That is all the correspondence we've received.
All right. Are there any other, Director Schmidt, is there any other correspondence we should be aware of?
We've received no other correspondence on these items.
All right, thank you. Then we move on to item 7, which is public hearings. The first item is public hearing, item 7A. The time should reflect that it is 12 minutes after 7 that we're reaching this issue. This is a special use permit, item 22-05011 at 3830 and 3836 Okemos Road, reference the Bickford House expansion. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. The proposal in front of you this evening is approximately a 9,500 square foot addition to the existing Bickford House building. The project encompasses both 3830 and 3836 Okemos Road. They have under contract with an option to purchase the White House to the north of the existing facility. White House would be removed, the barn would stay, and they would add on to the north side of the existing building. It would be a self-contained wing of the building that would house only memory care units. It would be 16 units. It's, if you'll note on the drawing, it's entirely self-contained, no exterior exits. There's a courtyard in the middle. This is how these types of facilities are designed, is from a memory care perspective, to ensure that our loved ones are safe in the buildings. Under the zoning of this property, the use as a non-residential facility is permitted, subject to a series of conditions under the special land use review, which I'll discuss briefly in a minute. Planning Commission previously approved this in 2005 along with the wetland use permit. Additionally, there was a variance approved. That variance was a very specific variance for landscaping adjacent to the building, and they had to provide double the amount of landscaping elsewhere on the site. That has been met, and that will not change with respect to this approval. So there were no other variances associated with this property. The existing building contains 46 units. There's a small number of memory care units in the building as well, and I will let Mr. Eby from the applicant speak further to that. As I mentioned, the property is zoned residential. It's zoned RA, single family medium density. In that district, non-residential uses such as this are permitted, subject to special use permit approval. Staff has reviewed this. There will be from a traffic perspective, there is no proposed additional traffic. This is a type of use that largely only generates emergency traffic because this is the type of facility that you are in on a 24-hour basis, 7 days a week kind of facility. Staff's reviewed the general special use permit standards and have found no major concerns. This is certainly a quality addition. It's a low one-story building, has low density of traffic, as I mentioned, has very little impact on services other than emergency services, which as you get older tend to be a little more intensive on the ambulance services. But largely it's served by public utilities. So from a general special use permit perspective, we've identified no major concerns. I would like to highlight sort of the non-residential standards that come up in 86-654 sub E. So these are the standards for non-residential uses in residential zoning districts. There's a whole list in the ordinance of items that can be permitted under this, and this is one of them. First, that the structure or use preferably shall be located at the outer edge of a residential district, abutting a business or industrial district, public open space. This is located on the western edge of the RA district, which spreads far, far to the east from here off of Okemos Road. So it meets that criteria, certainly. All means shall be utilized to face the project towards that public street, and they have done that. It's very clearly oriented towards Okemos Road, not towards the neighborhood. Motor vehicle entrance and exit shall be made on a major street, immediately accessible and avoid any impact on the residential area. They have a single point of access on Okemos Road. In the existing first phase, they are not proposing a second point of access for this proposed addition. The site location that offers a natural or man-made barrier to lessen that impact on the residential area. First off, you have Okemos Road on the west side, which is certainly a strong barrier, man-made, and the building is actually, on the bottom of a significant slope from the residential neighborhood, and combined with landscaping provides a pretty strong buffer to the neighborhood. And the proposed non-residential use will not require a costly or uneconomic extension of utility service. In this case, public water and sewer are available at the site, and therefore no extension is needed. At this point, staff has really identified no major concerns with this, and will happily recommend approval. We have provided a sample resolution in your packet this evening for discussion purposes, and obviously we'll bring this back at a future meeting after the Planning Commission has had the opportunity to review it. The applicant is here this evening, and I am going to quickly get his PowerPoint presentation ready to go. There we go. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time or in the future the Planning Commission might have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Schmidt?
You said it didn't impact traffic. Does that imply that there will be no visitors to the people that are living there?
I'll let Mr. Eby speak to this further, but if you'll note in the traffic analysis, based on 16 beds, you would expect 4 in the evening peak and 2 in the morning peak. It's just not a use that generates a lot of traffic.
Okay, okay.
I had a similar question, but mine was more nitpicky. Traffic assessment, traffic study, I get those terms confused, and it seemed like I read that they did a traffic assessment, but one's not required.
They did want to ensure that one was not required, essentially.
Gotcha, okay. And my other question is even more nitpicky. I don't understand the numbering of the two SUPs. They seem kind of similar, but I don't understand.
We are in the process of updating our numbering system, actually. This is a holdover. The first SUP, which you have in front of you this evening, I'll just go through the numbers real quick. The 22 is the year. The second two numbers, actually, in this case, are because this was a previous SUP. That 05 indicates there was an 05 SUP on this site. And the 11, my predecessor chose 11s and 21s and 31s for SUPs. And so that's how they've been numbered over the years. Everything from 1 to 11 has a designation in our filing system. The second one is a brand new number, so hence this is the 5th SUP we've had this year, which is why it's 51.
Thanks.
We will be updating this next year.
Commissioner Cordon.
Just a quick one, that could probably be taken care of.
Absolutely.
At a later point. I was looking at the zoning section of the staff report, the second paragraph, and let's see, it's the third sentence. Following the site is 4.52 acres in size. I think you want to look at that last sentence there because it seems to conflict with the first sentence. Maybe some words were missing.
Well, so it's actually trying to relate two different things. So there are actually uses in our ordinance that have a maximum lot size. And so that last sentence is actually saying this is not one of those uses that has a maximum lot size. But we can work
okay.
we'll work on rewording that going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Schmidt?
Should we hear from the petitioner?
So it's just the back and forth arrows.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for hearing our proposal this evening. My name is Richard Eby, and I work with Bickford Senior Living. We completed construction in 2008, and for 14 years now have been being able to provide services to many of the frail elderly in the community. We project that we served more than 240 residents in that period of time. It's been our privilege to have provided those services. During that period, this past 14 years of our experience, we have found that there have been two significant demographic changes that have occurred, and we've been able to identify. One of them is very positive, and that is that the average age of our residents has increased from about 82 to about 84 years, which means that we're coming in at a later and later age, which is encouraging to some of us. The discouraging portion of it is they're coming in with higher levels of acuity for memory issues. And we originally, when we built the building, we had projected demand for about 7 units, and so 7 units were originally included. Since that time, there's been an increased demand. We've had difficulty at times meeting that demand, and we know that the demand will increase. Oops. Here's kind of an interesting demographic statistic. The U.S. population age 65 and over is projected to more than double by the year 2040. So the demand for memory care is going to only increase with the future. Oops, hitting the wrong button there. This is the location of the 7 units of memory care that we existingly have. And this is the proposed site plan. The green area there is the 7 units of existing memory care. What will happen is, our proposal is to convert those into very low acuity memory care. Those people that are just beginning the process, that don't require as much care. The 16 unit addition, which is shown there in yellow, will be for higher acuity. As you notice, the property line there, we actually could have room to put the building on the existing lot. But we need a fire lane, we need setback, and we need stormwater detention. And that's the reason we need the additional property, is to provide those services. The kitchen facility that exists presently will service the needs of the new addition, the 16 new units of memory care. So there will not be an additional kitchen to produce odors and so forth. The parking arrangement has been modified. It's been, there is more parking currently on the north side of this property, and it's been adjusted and placed more along Okemos Road. So the parking has been somewhat rearranged. You can see the kind of a blue area, that's where the stormwater detention is proposed to be located. And you can see up in the northeast corner is a barn, and it's our hope that we'll be able to save that barn and be able to use that barn for storage. The proposed building will look very much like the existing building. In fact, the same architect has designed the expansion. You'll notice that it is a single-story building. We try to maintain a residential appearance and feel for those residents. This happens to be, I just picked the north elevation as an example. You can see we have a residential style roof line with asphalt shingles. We have stone, we have brick, we have siding, we have shutters at windows and so forth, all to provide what we hope to be a high quality residential feel for our residents. Of course, whenever we have a development such as this, there are always questions and concerns. And to address those concerns, I like to address them head on. Traffic is always an issue, and as Tim indicated, this is a very low impact use. According to the Institute of Transportation Engineers, about 4 vehicles per hour maximum during peak hour traffic will occur. Now, when they say trips, they're talking about driving in as a trip, driving out as a trip. So we're really looking at 2 people driving in and out. Now, another thought about this is, or a thing that should be considered, is that our peak hour traffic is at our shift change, which is at 7 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and 11 o'clock at night. Those are offset from the normal peak hour traffic. And so also, we don't anticipate additional deliveries. For example, when they deliver food products and so forth, we'll just order additional food. There won't be an additional truck in and out. Same way with garbage and trash pickups and deliveries. Parking is always a concern. As I mentioned, we have adjusted the parking, moved it up more towards Okemos Road, keeping that traffic noise away from the residential neighborhood. We are adding 8 additional parking stalls, which we think is reasonable to accommodate the additional residents. Most of the traffic is going to be produced by 2 elements, basically: family members visiting and staff members. Those will be the 2 primary sources for our traffic. So far as lighting is concerned, we have no lighting on the back side. We should not have lighting on the back side of the building. There may be one yard light near the rear for the parking, for safety of our staff when they have change of shifts. They also are protected with the photometric study will be done to ensure that there's no light spillover into the adjoining neighborhood. Pedestrian traffic, that may be a concern to some. This is a secured building. In order to enter or exit from the building, you have to have a fob, or you have to know the key. You have to know the key code. And so residents are not permitted to leave the building unless they are supervised. And to that end, there is an interior courtyard for residents who want to be outside, and we encourage that. There will be an interior courtyard where they will be able to be outside and have the outside experiences, be out in the sunlight and so forth. So let me see. Oh, yes, and also family members are encouraged to enter through the front door. That way we can better monitor who comes and goes to the building. Probably one of the concerns, greatest concerns for a neighborhood is how are we going to be buffered from this facility. And this is typically done by landscaping. Let me see, oops, hit the wrong button again. This is the concept site plan, which I colored up some of the changes changes in landscaping. It may be difficult to see. There are, along the northbound property line and along the east property line, primarily along the north, I guess, there are, I believe, 18 trees that will be retained. Those are trees that have a diameter of, I think it's 12 inches or greater in diameter. But in addition to that, there will be about 17 trees that will be planted additionally, plus shrubs, bushes, and so forth you see around the driveway there, or the parking. So we feel that we are a low impact use, that would be an asset to the neighborhood. We're serving the needs of the community. We feel like we are probably the highest and best use for this property. We don't see that, we would not believe that this will become a site for a new home development. And so we have a residential feel, and with that, I will entertain questions.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any questions for Mr. Eby?
Yes.
Yeah. I went by your property today, and actually on my bike, and I noticed a rather large increase or elevation to the north.
Yeah.
How much of that hill is going to have to be taken down?
About half of it. You know where the house is?
Yes.
Okay, from the back of the house, the back side of the house, from there on will probably be embankment.
Okay. I'm looking at your parking lot proposal, and I'm wondering if that fits. I mean, that's all got to be taken out. I assume the stormwater detention will be at roughly the same level as the building or below.
Yeah.
So you're going to be cutting off about half of the slope, or half of the high land. Is that it?
Yeah.
Is that what
Yeah.
I understand?
A little over half.
Okay.
Our engineer is here,
Okay.
Greg, so.
Hi, Greg Petrie with KEBS. Yeah, so where the stormwater detention is,
the parking will drain off into some infiltration areas and into a little detention area. But yeah, a lot of that area will be cut down. We're going to try to save all those trees along the north property line so that we'll start, below the tree, where the tree roots and that would be. And then also in the whole northeast corner, we're going to leave that kind of untouched.
Well, one of the benefits of the site that you're at is the low elevation compared to the residential property behind. And I was concerned that this might have to be up higher and have more visibility to them. But if you're going to lower it down to approximately the same level, then the question is, that's a lot of dirt to move. And that may create problems with your drainage. I don't know. But I appreciate that you've taken that into account.
Yeah,
I think it's more than a matter of drainage, it's a matter of budget.
Well,
as
that too.
far as the amount of cut that's on the site, yes.
And I am
the finished floor elevation of the two buildings is the same.
Okay.
There's
And
no difference in finished floor.
And I'm glad to see the added screening you've added, because that provides some protection for the neighborhood. And while the lot immediately to the north of you is currently vacant, it is a building site, and increasing that screenage to them is also very much appropriate. So thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Trezise kind of stole my fire. I was going to go down the same road. You said you did a complete inventory of all the trees 6-inch DBH or greater, and that we heard that something like 18 of them are going to be saved. Can you ballpark? Is that a quarter or a third or a half of the existing trees? Is that?
I would say it's about half.
Mm-hmm. All right. And I understand that grading that slope down to the detention pond is going to require the removal of that other half or whatever. But I'm looking at the landscaping plan, and I see a note about landscape islands, but I didn't find information about the ground cover that would be installed on that slope. So I guess where I'm heading with that is, have you given any consideration to planting woody species on that slope, both for soil retention, but also to increase the evapotranspiration to improve the performance of that detention facility?
I mean, I think we're willing to work with, with the staff to put in something like that.
I know that I've heard the drain commissioner on record saying that they would encourage woody planting in the appropriate circumstances. So I'm wondering if, I mean, there's language in here about all appropriate permits and approvals and such. If it's worth trying to work up some language that speaks to implementing the drain commissioner's recommendation for optimal planting of that hillside to maximize its performance in terms of stormwater, but also you showed the north elevation of the building, and there's a lot of folks who are going to be looking out in that direction, and you could have a mowed hillside, or you could have something with trees and butterfly gardens, and bird feeders, I imagine, will be out there. So there's a lot of really interesting stuff that could be planted on that remade hill slope that could be both aesthetically and hydrologically better than just mowing the grass. And I think it's going to be kind of a steep slope to, right? It's like 10 feet of elevation over
It'll be fairly steep from where the barn is, kind of going to the west.
Yeah.
That area. So yeah, we can definitely work with something maybe to help keep keep it stabilized a little bit and make it look nice.
I noticed on your plant list, the trees that you specified, a couple of them are native to this area, but it would be great if all of them were, right? Just chances of surviving and chances of providing better hydrology.
And the deer like them better.
Sure, we can definitely look at that too.
Right, and ones that the deer don't like. Yes, absolutely, yeah. Unless the residents want to see the deer, and no. I don't think we want to encourage a lot of wildlife right next to Oakmas Road. That's just not what, we're trying to solve that problem, but those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Anybody else? One question. Your type of facility is very, I had it worked out in my mind before I opened my mouth. Labor intensive, you have a very high ratio of staff to residents. You're planning on increasing your resident population by 16?
Yes.
Are you also planning a concomitant staff increase?
Yes.
How many?
Right now, during the big shift, which is the day shift, it would be about 3 to 4 staff members.
What is your current staff?
In the evening, it's much less because people are in bed and so forth.
What is your current staff level in the daytime?
Well, I have our director is here. She can answer that for us.
I thought I was going to come off unscathed and not have to come up. Good evening. I'm Aylin Dukes. I am the director of the community at Bickford. We currently staff in a model of 5 during the day, 5 in the afternoon. First shift is 5, second shift is 5, third shift is 3, and that is for the 46 rooms that we currently have. So we would be moving to, if you're adding 16, you would need to add approximately 2 people to that number on the principal shifts. So we would increase to between 4 and 5, as Mr. Easy was indicating, and that would be in that area specifically. And I am a certified dementia practitioner, so we would do the ratios that are appropriate for the acuity levels, and we do that based on an assessment.
Was the staff increase accounted for in your traffic study?
Yes.
It was.
As
All
well
right.
as the parking.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Director, I think we should be instructing people to give their address.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Their
Yes,
names.
that's correct. If you could, each of you give us your name and address again, please.
Okay. My name is Richard Eby. Home address,
Yes, please.
13112 West 126th Street, Overland Park, Kansas.
Oh, long trip.
I'm Greg Petru, Kebs Incorporated, 2116 Hazlitt Road, Hazlitt, Michigan.
Thank you.
Aylin Bowles Dukes, 2515 Victor Avenue, Lansing, Michigan, 48911.
Thank you, ma'am. Do you have any other people that would wish to present on behalf of your operation? All right. Do we have any comments from the board? Well, I just wanted to see if there were any questions left or comments. All right. Now we have we have at least 2 public comments. Let's hear from Ms. Page first. Was this the issue you wanted to address? Why don't you come on up, Ms. Page? Yeah. Again, tell us your name and address, please.
Good evening, Lynn Page, 3912 Raleigh Drive, Okemos, Michigan. I'm a 26-year resident of the Briarwood subdivision adjacent to the Bickford property, and was the board president at the time that the original building was built. The development process had some impact on the neighborhood, and if you're familiar with the area, Briarwood has 2 Okemos Road entrances, one at Tamarack and one at Heritage, and all the properties between the 2 entrances are zoned for single-family residential at this time. Anything that you build has a domino effect, and it's likely to spread all the way to Kinawa Drive, so I just would encourage you to be sensitive to the development issues that could impact, you know, a mature subdivision close to Okemos Road. Those of you who are longtime residents of the community may remember that in 2004, when the turning lane was added to Okemos Road, unfortunately they put it on the east side of the street, which brought the traffic 15 feet closer to our homes. So that's significant. When the original building was constructed, Briarwood has a platted walkway that goes from New Salem Avenue to what was our skiing hill that was the site, our sledding hill, where was the site of the original Bickford building. And they just scooped out the hill and left a huge cliff, a walkway that just drops off probably 15 or 20 feet from the backs of the houses on New Salem. And at that time, the grade of the property where they scooped it out came into question, and there has been a lot of erosion since that time, and I would ask that they remeasure the grade of that rear elevation to make sure that the hillside doesn't crumble and that the backyards that back up to that place where they've scooped out the hill don't end up losing ground. The density of the facility is significant, and I think from the drawings that I saw, it looks like the whole portion of the new building will be on the original parcel. They have not merged them. It's two separate parcels, and the calculation of the density is far above what's listed on the future land use map. The original building, when they did the concept plan and presented it to our subdivision, it had said that they were going to have a swale instead of a detention basin so that there wouldn't be standing water and we wouldn't be subject to having a lot of insects or mosquitoes. And they ended up building a huge detention pond right by the sidewalk on Okemos Road, and we are a walking neighborhood to the elementary and middle schools, and there was a very dangerous drop-off from the sidewalk to the detention basin that we had to beg them to put a fence up to protect the pedestrians. So I would just like to make sure that whatever you approve, if there's going to be a danger, especially to senior residents or people who may have memory issues, that you make it so that no one could fall into a very deep depression and, end up in the water. During the construction of the original building, they had made a lot of promises about where the staff would park, particularly those who came on shift at night and might shine their headlights into the windows or the rooms of the adjacent single-family homes. And they had said that they would turn off the parking lot lights at a certain hour, and I don't think that that has been adhered to. I think it's very important to the adjacent residential homes that the generator, the dumpster, the deliveries, are kept away from the residential properties, and, every consideration given to the single-family homeowners there who may be impacted by what is essentially a commercial development. That being said, I heard the discussion that they got a variance in one point and mitigated it elsewhere, but if you're the person who lives behind something that I see is now going to have 10 or more windows facing the east side of the property that will impact the single-family homes, that landscape buffer means a lot, and I don't think that variances should be permitted in a required landscape buffer. That being said, Okemos Road is a high-traffic primary road, and this is a residential use, and I think it is serving the community, but I would ask you to implement conditions to any approval that you might have that would safeguard our residential neighborhood and the houses between our entrances. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Any comments on that? Questions? Yeah. Lieutenant Grillo?
Thank you, sir. Good evening, board. Rick Grillo. I live at 3847 New Salem Avenue in Okemos, and I can see my house from here. as I look at the map, I'm the one that's located right behind the barn there in the northeast corner. I see several of my neighbors here as well today. Just want to let you know I've spoken to Mr. Eby multiple occasions, both in person and over the phone. We've had professional and cordial conversations, and I don't have, my concerns are very few. I'm in support of this this addition to the Bickford. They've been great neighbors for us. We've never had a problem with them. I understand, concerns about lights in the parking lot and things like that. That has not been a concern for me or my family. And honestly, I think that this will be an upgrade with the current property, the way that it is, the fencing and things like that. I think that this will definitely clean up my backyard especially, and I'm in support of it.
Thank you. Lieutenant, let me ask you a question. I know you outside of this context.
Yes, sir.
You are a lieutenant with the Meridian Township Police Department, is that correct?
Captain now.
Captain?
Yeah.
I'm
Keep pulling my name out of the hat, yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. Do you anticipate that the requested addition will have any impact on Meridian Township emergency services?
Slight impact. We live essentially right across the street from the South Fire Station. And obviously with any type of a assisted living place, there are going to be additional calls there. I think Mr. Schmidt already went over that that's just kind of the nature of the business. But as far as it looks like the fire lane and the way that they have everything laid out, it looks like it will still be very accessible to emergency vehicles, just from what I can see up here. And I don't do that for a living. That's the fire department. But from what I can see, it looks like it would be just fine. Maybe some additional calls there every week, but that's, again, nature of the business.
In other words, not a significant impact from your understanding?
I wouldn't think so, no. But.
Are there any other questions or comments with this? No? Go ahead, please.
That's general questions I have.
Yeah, go ahead.
For me?
No.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So maybe this for staff, but does what they submitted show a solid fence on the east side of the property between the residential properties and the parking area?
No, there's a substantial grade, so any fence they put in would actually be lower than the top of the hill to begin with. If you're putting it along the back side of that.
So the grade goes up further from where the property line is? Because generally fences go at or on the property line.
No, I'm sorry, I understood your question to be at the back of the parking lot.
No, I'm talking about the east border.
Yeah, so.
Of the property that is going to be added, that's currently single-family residential.
Yeah, I'll defer to Mr. Petrie from Cubs as to the grading and the screening here.
Hi, Greg Petrie with Kebs. So as you drive to that east side, I think it's probably 8 to 10 feet higher. So what he's saying is, as a car drives in there, your headlights would go into the hill almost.
Okay.
So if you were to put a fence anywhere except the very top, it wouldn't really help.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I know there was a concern because at the time that the first went in, having to do with noise in addition, not so much, there's noise from Okemos Road, but that's sort of like a humming background. But if you get, you're assuming there's a dumpster there and that's clanging, in terms of when they empty and what time they do it, in the morning typically. Delivery trucks, if they have backup indicators, a lot of those, beep when they back up. So I guess I understand, and it's great that the grade is there, so you're not going to get the night headlights or the early morning headlights from staff coming into work primarily, but also concerned about noise. And I believe that we have some standards for what, is allowable. So
Absolutely.
I guess I would suggest that that first, I guess, in designing this, we make sure that we're going to be in compliance, but then also test it out to make sure that they are in compliance. And again, a lot of it tends to be, when are the delivery trucks and the refuse hauler, when are they coming in? And I think I could appreciate Captain Grillo's situation, but he's really not behind. He's a ways away right now, somewhat away from, you're going to get closer to the action here. And I guess I would ask too, is the refuse container, is it any closer to is it staying in the same location, I guess, as it is now, or is that moving?
It's not. It's actually moving further away from the residents.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
One thing else I'd like to point out is that, where you're talking about potentially a fence, we do have like interlocking evergreens along the top of that slope. So I think that would, help quite a bit too with the noise.
Those are new to go in?
Yeah.
And are there sizes specified with those, or what?
I think Meridian standard 6 foot, if I remember, 5 or 6 feet.
So that's correct.
Okay.
The landscaping plan seems to have CS_4 and PO_4 on that interlocking series there. And those seem to be Colorado spruce and Serbian spruce.
Yeah, they're both.
But I wasn't sure what the 4 in that annotation is meant to be.
The 4 just tells you how many.
Okay, so there's 4 of each of those.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It looks like there's 8 up there.
And they're meant to be 5 foot in height, according to the plant list, when they go in.
I think that's the.
It's actually 8 feet in height.
Oh, is it 8?
Oh, am I misreading that? Sorry, it's getting kind of small in here.
It's okay. It's 8 feet height. The arborvitae.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good sized tree, 8 feet.
I guess one other question related to the building. I noticed that it shows like a dormer on the second floor, although that's been described as a one-story building. But at least the view that I saw looks like there's a window on the second floor. Windows, is that?
A story and a half.
That's just to break up the roof line for aesthetics.
Okay, so that,
It's a pink window.
okay, that's what I thought. Okay, yep.
Would you like to have the director comment on the deliveries?
Sure.
Nope. Per week on Thursdays, we have 2 deliveries from our produce and for our kitchen. And then on 2 separate occasions, we have the trash picked up. And so for a total of 4 deliveries through the course of the week of big trucks. Outside of that, we do not have a lot of delivery vehicles in and out of the parking lot.
Is there a standard time of day when that happens?
Absolutely, and I just wrote that down in my notes. We typically have our trash pickup time is at 8 a.m., so it's me always as I arrive avoiding the trash truck, so I know it firsthand, and hoping they're not going to back into me. And then the food delivery, we are scheduled between 6 a.m. and 11 a.m. on Thursdays. And that is by intention so that staff is able to get in, and they typically come in after our first shift has arrived.
Okay, I have a question for you. Do you have backup power?
Yes.
And will you be adding a new generator for this unit?
I don't think that that's enough square footage to require an additional, because what we're running at currently. No.
Okay.
No. Good thing I've been at these meetings before. No one would be able to answer that. Any other questions?
No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? Put this on. Put this off, or do we need a straw vote? Or straw vote? All right. All right. At this point, then, before we close this item, we'll take a straw vote on the positions of the commissioners. Let me start with Vice Chair Commissioner Tresize.
I would support.
Commissioner Snyder.
Support.
Commissioner Richards.
Support. I guess I would be interested in what carries over from the first SUP that was granted in terms of the noise regulations and odor, just to make sure that we've got those covered in this one.
Screening also.
And screening, correct.
Commissioner Cordell?
I'm supportive of this. I think they're trying to work with the township to create something that'll continue to serve the community.
Commissioner Primo?
I'm supportive, but I would agree with Commissioner Richards that we should take particular care to address the concerns of the neighborhood. They seem to be supportive if, and I think we should be serious about some of those ifs in terms of their concerns about the way the project is managed. Obviously, one of the issues for a while is going to be some noise relative to the construction. So there, as we review the project and I presumably approve it, I would encourage staff to be very aware of those concerns and try to be as responsive as we possibly can.
Commissioner McConnell?
I would echo those concerns. I'm generally supportive of the project. It's certainly a sector that we need to be addressing in our township, and this is a very sensible place to do it. I would appreciate if staff could find a way to, either with a condition or another process, to ensure that whatever problems with erosion on prior steep banks is assessed and addressed, and that efforts be made to avoid those issues with the new steep bank that's going to be cut with proper vegetation, as I mentioned, in consultation with the Drain Commissioner's office.
Thank you. And as for myself, the chair, I suppose the record should reflect that I'm intimately familiar with this neighborhood. I lived there many years ago on New Salem, the first street in the neighborhood. However, my time in that neighborhood predated this project. So I'm familiar with how much of a change it has imposed on the area. And frankly, I'm very supportive of what they're requesting here. I don't think it's going to make a significant difference to the residents of the community as long as the protections that we've discussed are taken into account. So I would be supportive as well. All right? Yep. It is now 2 minutes after 8, and we're closing item 7A. We'll now address item 7B, which is special use permit 22-051, which is the same property location, Bickford House expansion. And this deals with structures greater than 25,000 square feet.
Thank you. So this request is, as you mentioned, separate from the previous request. This is something that Senior Planner Shorkey and I are going to figure out a better way to handle going forward eventually, because as planners, we don't like doing 2 SUPs for a site. It's very cumbersome. But the request in front of you this evening is for a building greater than 25,000 square feet. The existing building is 24,561. They very clearly cut out about 11 square feet of the courtyard in order to get under the 25,000 square feet the first time through. Now with the addition, they are over the 25,000 square feet. You'll note that the ordinance has no different standards for a building over 25,000 square feet. The entire difference in the process is in the process. This part of the approval will go to the township board for final decision making. We've laid out our discussion on this in depth during the overall SUP, and so staff really has no further comment at this point. Would recommend approval of this at a future meeting, and have provided you with a draft resolution if you'd like to discuss anything in further depth.
Any comments on that? I don't believe we have any public address directed to this issue, unless I'm mistaken. All right. Any commissioners wish to address this issue? Do we take a straw vote on this then? All right. So we'll call for a straw vote on item 7B. Let's start with Commissioner McConnell.
Support?
Commissioner Primo,
Support.
Commissioner Cordell.
Support, there's a fair amount of acreage to support that amount of square footage.
Commissioner Richards,
Support.
Commissioner Snyder,
Support.
Commissioner Tresize,
Support.
and the chair supports us also. Record should reflect it is now 5 minutes after 8, and we have closed item 7B. We will now address public hearing 7C, which relates to mixed-use plan use development number 22014-1621 at 1621 and 1625 Hazlitt Road. This relates to Hazlitt Village.
Good evening. As you noted, this is MUP number 22014, SP Holding Company. This project, commonly known as Hazlitt Village, located at 1621, 1655 Hazlitt Road. A property is zoned C2, and that does allow the mixed-use plan unit development. The overall project is about 19 acres. This is the eastern half of the current Hazlitt Village Square Shopping Center on the southwest corner of Hazlitt and Marsh Road. That property currently contains a multi-tenant building and 2 standalone buildings that front on Hazlitt Road. The multi-tenant building is mostly vacant. There's a couple businesses in there. The 1,619 square foot former PNC Bank is located right on the corner, and that's proposed to be demolished. And then there's another building that's about 10,500 square feet, former video store, now houses Solid Rock Baptist Church, and they're proposing to redevelop that and add a drive-through and probably house the development's community center there. Overall, the proposal consists of 302 residential units and 21,750 square feet of non-residential space. That is contained in the 2 buildings, both fronting on Hazlitt Road. The 302 dwelling units are made up of apartments, stacked flats, and townhouses. We do have a communication. The ratio is going to change, so I'm not going to go into that as much, but it is a mixture of different types of residential. Because this is because this is an MUPUD that's there, and the type of it is, it's allowed 14 dwelling units by right. They can go over that if they provide extra amenities, and they have. They're currently showing 15.9 dwelling units per acre, and I'll get into that in a moment. As I said, it conforms with the master plan. It conforms with the zoning ordinance. This is shown our future land use as commercial. It's C2 zoning. There are floodplains and wetlands on the property. However, it's all to the south of the development. They are out of the wetland. They are out of the floodplains, and they're staying out of the buffer area. There is a natural feature assessment and wetland delineation have been provided, but that put this, adding that seemed, they're not, it doesn't affect the development, and it's available if anyone wants to see it. There is a priority conservation corridor and a fragile link on the southwest portion, kind of concurrent with the floodplain wetland area. And there is, of course, the trail there, and they are proposing a trailhead as one of their amenities. I guess I'll get into the specifics. They are requesting 6 waivers. 3 of them are setback related. 1 of them is a parking related waiver. Building height is what's shown on the concept plan and what this was based on, and then a parking setback. So based on that, they need at least 6 amenities. Now, they provide more than that. So the amenities in the MUP ordinance are divided up into 3, what I ended up calling tiers. The tier 1 ones are worth 3 each. The tier 2 worth 2 each. And then tier 3 are worth 1 each. You're only allowed to count 1 tier 3 though. And you can see there, they've got this community-focused bundle, which includes a trailhead that is being deeded over to the township that is adjacent, that's in like in the southeast corner and will give public access to the trail to the south. They are proposing electric car charging stations, 4 to be built and 5 in the future, public outdoor seating, public pickleball courts, and a new bus stop. Now, that is something that staff is talking to CATA about and will come up in the future. Tier 3 stuff they're proposing, they've got plenty of green space going above and beyond the requirements for this. They're proposing low-flow plumbing fixtures and decorative lighting as well. So the MUPD ordinance requires that all proposals incorporate 1 amenity. The request for the density bonus requires 4 more amenities. Each requested waiver requires an amenity, so that's another 6 amenities. And the architectural plans currently show that building A1 is 46 feet tall. That exceeds the maximum by 1 foot. So that means it has to include 2 more Tier 1 amenities. As a result, the proposed MUPD requires 13 amenities, 3 of which have to come from Tier 1. They have right now 12 amenities, 1 from Tier 1. I believe that this issue is addressed in the comments, and I'll let the applicant speak to this in a moment. The final amenity, as I said, is a bus stop. That's not in the concept plan. It may be required due to CATA regulations. The property next door to them came through as Pine Village. They're now calling themselves American Home Meridian. They have a CATA bus stop on their property. Turns out CATA wants a loop and a return station as well. So staff's working to coordinate this with CATA, and we'll have more details on that at a future meeting. As far as any issues, I do note the concept plan calculated required parking as 1 space per one unit or 1 bedroom unit. That's not how our ordinance is written. It's written to say, regardless, multifamily development is 2 spaces per. That means they're not asking for a big enough waiver. They have 872 required spaces. They're proposing 486 spaces. They need a waiver of 386 spaces from the township board as part of this, not the 40 that are shown on the concept plan. In addition, 1 bicycle parking space has to be required for every 10 required spaces. With 872, that requires 86 bicycle spaces, and that just needs to be shown in the plan. Canopy trees need to be shown. Lighting, need to know dumpster locations. Photometric was provided. That'll be reviewed during site plan review. Sign program is required. We need to know kind of general locations of signage. Traffic generation report that was provided. It needs to be updated to reflect the concept plan. There's not enough units shown. There's not enough square footage of non-residential space. And then, let's see, finally, that is everything. So conclusion, on the last page of my report, they currently need to show 2 more Tier 1 amenities. The traffic generation comparison needs to be updated. The parking calculations need to be updated. The MUTD needs to describe sustainability and environmental considerations. The concept plan needs to be updated, show the bus stop, and again, we're talking to CATA about the specifics on that. General locations of freestanding wall signs need to be shown. Bicycle spaces are noted as existing on the architectural plan, but they need to be shown on the concept plan, at least where they're going to be located at. And the sidewalks on final point, there is an eastbound non-motorized path coming from American Home Meridian site adjacent to the west. You can see it coming over from the west side on that abandoned Raby Road right-of-way. That needs to connect. So that's our report right now. I can answer your questions. I know the applicant does have representation here.
Yeah, I'm a little confused on the site amenity plan. I found two of them in the packet. One on page 60 of the PDF dated April 25th.
Yeah, so ultimately what you're seeing is they provided site amenity with the initial submittal, and then the one that is attached to the letter dated April 21st is an updated one, which I believe Mr. Corby from Integrated Architecture will be able to speak about a little more further. They were trying to respond to some of our initial comments and show that they're making good faith effort here to bring this into compliance.
Okay. And on the remaining required amenities, if I read it right, they still need 2 more points, and those could come from 2 more Tier 1 amenities. Could they not also come from another Tier 2?
No, not for the building height. However, if they lower the building A1 by 1 foot, that requirement goes away. Building height requires 2 extra Tier 1 amenities.
Oh, you can't get them from one Tier 2?
That is correct.
Wow, you guys were really specific with that ordinance change.
But I believe...
That was a very late change.
Didn't you pay attention?
I tried.
It was a very late change to the ordinance that was requested by one of the township board members and was made at the last draft that was provided.
Thank you.
Yeah, I believe, on the second page of their letter, they have adjusted building A1 height and will be compliant and not exceed 45 feet. So I'm pointing that out because I had to do a report based on the concept plan that I had. We got this letter after everything was prepared.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Cordell.
You're fine. Maybe we should shift to the petition applicant and then return to commission comments or questions.
That's fine.
Because it seems like we need those two together at this
Sure.
point.
Is there someone from the applicant who cares to address the board?
Thank you, Mr. Shorkey.
Please tell us your name and your address, please.
Sure. I'm Mike Bosgraff, 873 South Shore Drive, Holland, Michigan. I am president of Bosgraff Homes. With me tonight is Chad Coster, a lifelong friend, business partner. He has Paramount Properties. And then also Mike Corby with Integrated Architecture, and Greg Petro with KEPS. And so I think we're here to answer most of your questions. I apologize for Mike Corby. He got on the revisions a little fast, and that's, I think, the questions there. And I think he can probably address that a little bit, as well as he has a short presentation to kind of go through the plans and talk a little bit about that if we could. Good?
You pull anything up? Architectural?
Yeah, for the most part. Mike Corby with Integrated Architecture, 840 Ottawa, Grand Rapids, Michigan. I want to first apologize because I think my Tier 1s are his Tier 3s, so I just intuitively thought a Tier 3 is worth 3, but I was wrong. So my letter, if I'm confusing you, it's not because I'm dyslexic. I just had a little mistake. But I want to walk you through a little bit of the plan. There are a lot of we got the comments from staff, including engineering and some other comments. So we did send a letter last week, and I think Tim wanted us to keep it specific to what the edits were. I'll talk about those just in the differences. The plan hasn't materially changed from what you saw in the original packet, but I will highlight those things. But I think I think staff did a very good job of kind of giving the backdrop. I'd like to talk a little bit about the architecture and the kind of the experience that we're proposing here, because we're really looking at creating a really vibrant kind of mixed-use development in the community, and really focused on some strong principles that we want to make sure are part of this new kind of community within the community, like walkability. So there was care in how we set up our pathways through the property. making sure that there were activities both for the residents of our community, but also it was an inclusive development so that we're encouraging the community at large to be able to kind of not feel that this is not part of their community. I'll get into the amenities, some of those which obviously are going to be for the broader community, some of those are for our development. And just if you're familiar with Bosgraf Homes, they do quality residential projects, and so really we've kind of got a very, what we feel is a strong kind of package here as it relates to creating a great neighborhood. So I'll get into some of the practical things here. We are focused kind of on the corner. I think a lot of the, what I would call the variances or the waivers that we're looking at are really kind of vestiges of the underlying zoning that I think we're trying to get away from in terms of some of the larger setbacks that were, I think, part of how this original site was designed, but how we want to kind of re-engage architecture in the streets. So I think a lot of those we're not necessarily requesting, they just kind of come with the package as we look at the MUPUD project or zoning. But as you can see, we're maintaining, just starting with ingress and egress. There are 3 current curb cuts that serve the property. We're not changing those general locations. I think there are some comments about just, fixing up some of the infrastructure that's between our development and the rights of way, or in the rights of way, so we'll be doing that. But we didn't want to change the character that's kind of already there and already the infrastructure in terms of traffic. So we've also met with the Pine Village project team to the west and just coordinated things, making sure that we understand what they're doing, both in terms of their project and schedule and vice versa. So really trying to make sure that they mesh together because they kind of need to. The primary development here is residential with commercial on basically a new building on the corner. Just for reference, H1 is a new building. That's where the bank is now. We do not have a user yet, but I think it's designed to kind of, again, engage the corner a little bit better so the building is closer to the right of way. Our building G1 is an existing building. We plan to also keep that for retail, restaurant, community use. We're also kind of modifying that building a little bit to create one of our amenities that I'll get into in a second, which would be a public outdoor space. It'll be covered, so that obviously will benefit the neighbors in the area, but also the community at large. We've talked about the ability to possibly invite food trucks from time to time and have this kind of be a plug-in space for that kind of activity. So really trying to, again, bring people on the site. As was mentioned, we have access to the trail. We're not only connecting to the trail with a so-called trailhead, we're also kind of making sure that sidewalk network leads to our kind of community node that we're going to have onto Hazlitt. So we're really trying to, again, engage the community at large. Our stacked flats building along Hazlitt is a 4-story building that has 58 units. And again, the scale of that building was really generated to make sure that it was sympathetic to the building next door. The Pine Village building will be 4 stories. So we felt that the scale needed to be similar. The balance of the residential are going to be a combination of stacked flats, so 12-unit or 24-unit buildings. And then we'll also have some townhouses on the kind of southeast and southwest portions, like along the trail and along the wetland areas. The distinction here is I think all our buildings are going to have front doors on the streets. We really wanted to make sure that you were not driving through parking lots. We created what we consider kind of genuine streetscapes where you've got parallel parking, sidewalks, landscaping, and front doors. That was very important, just kind of how we created the loops, with the primary parking areas kind of being behind those pathways that we're creating. We also created a central node that you see on the plan there that will have, it's a park-like setting. It'll have pickleball courts. For those of you that are familiar with pickleball, it's a noisy activity, so we wanted to kind of keep that a little bit further away from the residences. But again, you can kind of, I won't get into the detail, but a lot of the streetscape area not only is following kind of what we're trying to create with these pathways, but it's also responding to a practical issue, which is just some of the infrastructure that's there from a utility perspective. The site's got a very robust network of utilities on it, and we're just trying to make sure that we work within those networks as much as we can. So the trailhead and dog park that we're creating, maybe I'll transition to the amenities, and then I'll get back to the architecture in a second. But in the letter that was sent to staff last week, we made a few shifts. The original submission had just over 300 units. One of the things that we're doing is we're shifting the unit count and the distribution of units so that 50% of our units are one bedroom. That seems to work well with the market that we understand, but it also happens to be, I think, a tier 2 amenity. So at least the tier 2s were on the same page. We are adding some 3 bedrooms, not a lot. We are increasing some of the 2 bedrooms, and we're adding some studios. So the total unit count that we're going to propose on the edited plan will be 290 versus 302. The tier 1 amenity that we're proposing, and it's shown a little bit more clearly, so that second amenity sheet that you got last week is maybe a little more clear on what the new distribution of amenities will be. But basically, our tier 1 amenity will be the dog park and the trailhead. And what we're proposing there is restrooms. We'll have a bike repair kiosk, obviously water, and then just benches, places to kind of hang out. We'll have dedicated parking there so that anybody that comes on to the site to use the trailhead, there'll be signed parking that will be for the trailhead users. So that's our tier 1 amenity. And then some of the tier 2 amenities are similar to what was originally proposed. The electric car charging stations and the public outdoor seating plaza, and that'll be served with Wi-Fi. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, the dwelling unit type amenity 2, which is having 50% of one of the unit types, which will be the 1 bedrooms. Our tier 3 amenities, his tier 3 amenities, my tier 1 amenities, will be the green space. And again, we've only counted one of these in our tally for amenities. So because we are, if you'll notice, we're not going to need the 2 tier 1 amenities for the building height variance. So that reduced a couple of amenities that were in the staff report. But the low flow plumbing fixtures will still be part of our amenity package with wireless access also and decorative lighting, even though those don't count towards the total in the amenities. As we get into kind of our additional information that we'll submit, we'll have a sustainability matrix that we will establish. We're planning to use USGBC LEED guidelines as our basis. We're not seeking LEED certification, but we are kind of using the LEED Silver standard as our basis. So we'll give you more detail on what that will include in each of the different categories of LEED. Just going down my list. As I mentioned, we've adjusted building A1's height so that it's compliant. We are going to be updating the traffic study to reflect the the proposed plan, including some of the changes that we've made since the staff report. And let me show you the architecture, just to go through these. So this is a detailed plan showing the community building, how it'll have both some of the resident amenities kind of on the south end of it, and then it will have the community plaza on the west end of it, as well as the ability for us to kind of accommodate food trucks. This is the former amenity sheet. The lighting plan. Architecturally, we want to do something that's familiar materials, maybe has a little bit of a contemporary feel to it. It's got a little freshness to it, but again, brick and siding, possibly introducing a little bit of color. The stacked flats, so these will be the 12-unit and the 24-unit buildings. As I said, they will have front doors on the roads as well as the common entrance. And again, there's a 24-unit version. And they'll have some similarities, but there'll be a little bit of diversity in the look, just so that there will be a little visual interest in the development. And most of them will have balconies. These are the townhouses that will be along the south and southwest. So they will have garages. And then the commercial buildings will be basically putting a new facade on the existing building. We'll be kind of deconstructing that west end so that the outdoor plaza, the community plaza we'll be creating will be covered. And then we're showing a potential option for the corner building, but again, I think the only caveat there is once we get a user, that may need to shift a little bit. But I think we want it to be in keeping with the rest of the architecture. Unit plans, this is the building on Hazlitt. And we do have some signage shown. I think the plan is to, the current signage locations that are on Hazlitt and Marsh Roads, we're planning to keep those. We are adding some signs, obviously, and especially the buildings that will be accommodating tenants. We're showing kind of strategies for those, but the actual signage we won't know until we have a tenant in place. One thing I did want to note is our building, the A1 building will be actually the building that the leasing office will be in, so there possibly might be a separate fitness center in that building as well for the residents. And again, the signage will be in keeping with the rest of the architecture. And then you can see on this particular sheet the small support building that'll be at the trailhead. And some idea of some of the materials. So again, very excited about a lot of the quality. This project's really based on kind of quality of life and creating a very kind of high quality residential option in the community, as well as kind of some on-site amenities and services that will kind of make it a very genuine mixed-use project. So here to answer questions. And one last thing, the special land use permit is for the drive-through. We are planning to keep a drive-through or have a drive-through on the commercial building that we have, both the commercial buildings actually.
Commission members? Commissioner Cordell?
Yeah, when I saw that's by G1, correct, the drive-through? I was hoping it was a drive that goes through it, but not functioning as a drive-through, if you know what I mean. Because you're trying to create a pedestrian environment, but with the drive-through that seems to defeat it.
It is, it's kind of the reality that we're trying to keep, even with the parking areas, we are trying to understand that it's never great to walk by a large parking lot. So we're trying to create loops and pathways that allow you to kind of have a nice circuit. But yes, there are going to be situations like that where the pedestrian way kind of runs to the south and around it and to the north. But if you're kind of going just east of G1, it's not as convenient. But we're trying to work around that a little bit to the extent that we can.
Yeah. I have a question for the director. So we have an MUPD.
Yes, ma'am.
But we normally review drive-throughs. Does that mean an additional case for the drive-through within the MUPD? Or?
It does not. In the most recent amendment to the MUPUD that the Planning Commission recommended for approval and the Township Board adopted, the MUPUD functions as the special use permit for the site.
Okay, so it's all consolidated?
Yeah, including the special use permit for buildings greater than 25,000 square feet. So what'll happen is there will be one approval that governs this site, so we don't have to chase 16 approvals in the future. And there will be one document that will cover the approval for this site in the form of it's not exactly going to be a development agreement, but something of that nature.
So it's streamlining?
It's consolidating for future reference because, to be perfectly frank, trying to find the approvals for some of these is very difficult.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I saw some attributes to the project that I was really pleased with, but the drive-through was not one of them because I just thought, neighbors and people would be crossing on foot in different directions for this. And it seems like to me just when I'm like orienting myself, so Hazlitt Road is on the north,
right.
But south and east of there seems to be a focal point. Is that like a place for a fountain or it's a rotary?
The roundabout?
Around, okay. It seems like with that landscaped area, you could create, a nice feature in that roundabout other than grass.
I think we're planning to do a landscaped feature there. I think there was one of the comments that we'll just have to make sure that Greg studies appropriately is just making sure that emergency vehicles can navigate through that properly. But yes, I think we do want to make it a feature element. So probably some landscaping that's more than just lawn.
Are there any plans to light the pickleball courts?
No.
Good. Okay, good. Glad to hear it. Okay. And I was just trying to get a handle on the different kind of units. You had stacked units, you had apartments, and so forth. When you say a townhouse, I often think of a multi-story unit that might have stairs within it. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes. So the building on Hazlitt will be the term is stacked flats. It's basically units, one-story units stacked on top of each other. So it'll have that building will have a central corridor and then units. It'll have an elevator and then there'll be balconies that most of the units have. But the difference with ours than maybe a typical building is the units that are at grade, we actually want them to have front porches that are on the street. So I think it does have internal circulation, but it also has the units that are at grade feel more like a townhouse unit because they've got their own porches and their own entrance points.
Were those the townhouses or?
This is building A1, the 4-story building on Hazlitt.
Do you have an elevation to show?
Yeah.
I was a little, it's a lot of information, so I was a little challenged to keep up with things on the ground, so to speak, the site plan, and then thinking of what that looks like as you're walking through the project. So if you slow it down a bit, that would help.
No problem. Well, we have more diversity by design. We want to have a lot of different residential types available for the different individuals, whether it's families or young professionals or whomever, if they have children. So the building on Hazlitt the elevations are shown there. It's got a base of masonry. It's kind of got some traditional principles in place. but it does have a more kind of contemporary feel to it. As I mentioned, balconies, but I think, I don't know if I can.
If you show the townhouses.
Yeah.
So these are the townhouses, and our company is primarily single-family condominium home builders, and then we do these almost on the side. This is a product we do quite often for sale, this particular product that you're seeing on screen right now. And it's a 2-story unit, living quarters on the main floor, dining, kitchen, and then upstairs would be 2 and 3 bedrooms. They would have one entranceway, they'd have a back patio or porch, and their own private garage.
I see.
And that's kind of what we're referring to as townhomes. Most people refer to them as townhome or condominium designs or 2-story designs.
Multifamily attached.
Yes.
Multifamily attached, they have a garage, they are 2 stories, and there'll be 2 or 3 bedrooms.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
With the main living area on the main level and then the bedrooms up. So I'll go back through real quickly, and there's only one product type that we're missing now, or housing type that we're missing, and that's the 12 and 24 unit buildings. Again, they will have an internal stair for the units that are above grade, but the units that are at grade will actually have front doors on the street. And again, we've got a few, we've developed a number of different models with Bosgraf homes that have a little bit of a difference. So the different mixes within the buildings creates the configuration of the building, for instance. And again, most of them will have balconies, some of them do not. But again, what they're trying to do is reach different price points. So they'll have some lower price points, and they'll have some higher price points, and the difference will be the amenities that you get or the type of unit or the size of unit.
That's good to see the variety.
Yeah, I think that was something we shifted a little bit from the initial submission, but I think it's based on in promoting that diversity of offerings. Let me just go back. So these are a few of the different versions of the 12 or 24 unit buildings. There's 3 stories. As I said, they have an internal stairway, and then they are a combination of, these are primarily 1s and 2s. So the studios will be in the A1 building, and we don't have a lot of studios, and the 3 bedrooms would be in the townhouses.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Freeman?
Did you address the parking issue?
I did not mean to imply that we were unsatisfied with the number of parking spaces. We just wanted to make sure that when it was in black and white, they were requesting the correct waiver. So we're not seeing an issue.
Okay, thank you. That helps. I wasn't clear with that.
Commissioner Richards?
Yeah, I've got a question about sort of the layout, and I guess now that I look at the plan in a little more detail, and that's regarding what you see from the street. I know in some of our more recent developments, we've had the buildings closer to the road with parking on the backside, so you don't see the parking. And I notice on Hazlitt, where you're putting actually the what's now the bank, you said that's going to be a different building, right? Okay,
Correct.
so that's right on the street, but then you're leaving the building that then is going to have parking. So I guess you probably don't have an option if you leave the building, but if you decide to take the building out, then I guess I would suggest you move the building closer to Hazlitt Road. And then looking at Marsh Road, having driven that a lot of times, the road is above the grade of the development, so you can see that the much southernmost, I guess it'd be southwest, has a parking lot between the building and the parking area between the housing and that. So you're going to be above it, you're going to see the parking. So I guess from my view, it would be better from an aesthetic standpoint to have the parking on the backside. Now, again, that changes the whole design, but because you are above, number one, you're looking down to begin with, so you're going to see that. How tall are the buildings that are in the southwest? The building in the southwest corner. There's a small one and a big one. So
I think they're,
3-story.
yeah, they're all 3-story, midpoint of the
They're going
gables.
to be what? The roof is going to be slightly higher than the road there, maybe.
Yeah, I think.
So I guess from an aesthetic standpoint, you're going to see that where you don't see it now. Right now, you've got a flat roof and a 1-story building.
Yeah. For perspective, that parking lot that is currently there is almost at the exact same grade as what we're proposing. A couple other considerations why we've kept the parking there is, according to Kebs, there's a bunch of existing utilities that go through there.
Okay.
So moving that building doesn't really work very well.
Right.
We also have a very small amount of potential contamination on site, which is directly kind of that building to where that parking lot is.
Right.
And the best way to handle that contamination is we can either scoop it out, which is the easiest, but if it's vapor and we put a building on it, then we have to have mitigation going through the building, so it just really doesn't work for us.
Okay, that's good. Good explanation.
And you hit on probably one of the more interesting dilemmas that we had. Those were the practical issues, but on the planning side, we felt if that building were closer to Marsh, it would be kind of an awkward situation where you're looking down on the building.
Right.
This way, it reinforces the walkability internally, so it was a...
I guess the only thing I would say, you might want to look at some architectural features that are a little different on that building that might catch your eye as you're coming southbound. Just kind of takes you away from the parking lot, and maybe a little different than you might have interior, just as a thought, because obviously you're trying to, people are going to get a very good view of your development there. So I think you're going to want that to be as nice looking as you possibly can make it.
Commissioner Richards.
Yeah, echoing a bit Commissioner Cordell's comments about the walkability, I'm trying to imagine a pedestrian coming at the site from the intersection of Marsh and Hazlitt and wanting to get to the G1 building, the restaurant, and the community center, which seems to have something called a spool behind it. Is that a splash pool? Is that what that is?
It's spa pool, but
Okay.
it's a smaller water element.
So really, if I'm reading the architectural site plan correctly, in order to do that, I would go down Marsh Road past the first entrance there, walk along that sidewalk, go around the roundabout, and then make my way to the community center that way? That would be my pedestrian access?
Yeah, I think we can enhance that. I'm seeing exactly what you're referring to. I think both from, if you're walking along Hazlitt, let's say westbound, and you want to go to G1, or if you're coming off of Marsh, I think we need to kind of get better connectivity, even with the drive-through there. I think we can do that in a better way.
Thanks. My other question really is about H1, and it took me a while to get my north correct as well. The staff report said that the proposed use is consistent with the master plan in the sense that it calls for a mixed-use core, and this kind of fits that definition. And while it doesn't have any regulatory authority, the PICA section of the master plan calls this out as a potential intensity change area, which is what this is doing. But it did have that corner as green space in its sort of conceptual wish list. And here you've got a building that's right on that corner. And we've gotten a fair amount of feedback from the development on the southeast corner appearing to many people to be very, very close to the sidewalk, which is what we want when we're trying to promote mixed-use, walkable, friendly. And I think that complaint may be mainly about sight lines, but I'm curious maybe this is too much detail, but is there any plan for any outdoor seating at that retail restaurant? Any street-facing seating going on there?
Possibly, again, until we get an actual user, it's hard to say. I think that's your comment about, building D1 was the same with H1. I think the deference was to getting it to kind of balance the southeast corner to a certain extent, which is, again, what we're seeing more and more in communities. If that were shoved off the corner, I don't think that would be bothersome to us. It just would have parking then on the corner, which we felt of the two, it would be better to kind of strengthen that corner with architecture. But that's a good it'd be good to get your thoughts on that, because it was one of the other things that we kind of debated on how to lay that out.
To your question, Commissioner McConnell, the design being proposed does not foreclose upon the idea of outdoor seating should the right tenant take that
Correct.
space.
It would be a much more attractive project to me if that were the case.
Agreed.
Agreed. It's going to largely depend on the tenant, we believe.
And the community center is for residents, or will be available to the general public for lease or rental or borrowing or?
Yes. It's planned to be an amenity for the residents, but it will be also open for use, rental, events space for the general public.
And the same thing would be true of the pickleball court? It could be booked by residents, or?
We've changed that. I think in the original, that was going to be one of our amenities, and we just felt, just because of the challenges of if they're offering it as amenity, and there are pickleball courts in the community that we didn't feel we had to add to that mix. So in this case, we thought it would be better if that were a resident amenity, and so that we don't have to get into the enforcement and it just doesn't create another set of challenges. So I think we decided that it's purely a resident amenity.
Great. And lastly, if I remember correctly, the dog park is meant to be managed by, tell me who's going to manage that?
I think the thought, maybe Mike can speak to that, but I think the thought was the land would be created, I don't know if it's donated or just easement or something, but.
Yeah, I think we're still in conversations with staff. I don't think we have a strong feeling whether we donate it, gift it, keep it. I think we're looking for the township to help us, maintain as we start getting, public bathrooms and spaces. So we view it as a public space. I believe staff has encouraged us, or at least I think we're leaning towards the direction that some form of Meridian is going to take ownership and maintain it.
Great, great. I mean, the township is currently investing in the construction of another trailhead on Okemos Road and having another rest stop with water and the bike stand and possibly
I think this will be a
restrooms.
fabulous spot. It's it has some parking for the general public, and I think they're welcome.
Thank you.
Commissioner Snyder, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a couple. So in the architectural plans, I didn't see where, then maybe you're not sure yet, but where the placement of the playground would be. I thought I saw that as one of the potential amenities.
Right now, I think we're probably planning it near G1. I think the spool is, again, that's going to be a residential amenity. It's not a public amenity, but we're planning to have a small playground there, as well as some outdoor terraced areas. So I think it's probably going to be near G1.
Okay. And I also just wanted to mention, I live in Hazlet, and I'm very, I'm really encouraged and excited to see this property get transitioned into something that the community can enjoy. In looking at the plans, I was curious as to the decision-making on the townhomes, because to my understanding, these are going to be rentals, and I'm curious as to whether or not that is something that would be reconsidered as, potentially for home ownership, because there is a very real need for affordable homes in our community, and you could really be serving that need by providing, diversity there.
I think it wouldn't be the first time that it transitioned from rental to purchase, but I think right now they're planning to start out as rentals. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. you know, it's just, it's a really hard transition to go from through rentals, primarily all the way through rentals to get to home ownership. It just traditionally hasn't worked very well. I guess another way to probably look at it is providing that same affordable housing, it's just in the form of rental versus home ownership.
Sure. I guess I don't fully understand the difficulty in the transitioning from rental to, I don't know, home ownership? Could it just be home ownership up front?
Driving through rentals to home ownership has traditionally been difficult to sell.
And, sorry.
They're talking about physically putting the owned units behind a rented unit is difficult. It's usually the flip side.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Trusais.
Yeah, this is a development over 5 or 6 years, speculate, or what's going up first?
Mostly what's kind of in the, I don't know. Obviously G1 will be part of the initial renovation, and then coming off of Marsh here, and then I'm not sure how much of, I think we talked about summer, all of what's happening here.
We briefly talked about.
You're going to have to get to the mic.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
There is a chart in here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean,
Introduce yourself, please.
oh, hi, Chad Coster, 940 Floral, Grand Rapids, Michigan. We had a chart kind of put together, and again, this is, we'd love to stick with this as much as we can. Starting this summer, talking about demolition of the structures on the property, fall and winter, spring, underground construction of those utilities and roads, and then spring of '23, we're talking buildings G1, A1, B3, B4, B5, and D4. And again, I know Mike and I have talked about pushing into the Cs and Ds over there as well, since that infrastructure is going to come down likely off of Hazlitt Road. You know, there's an economics question here as well. So if we're pulling that water and sewer, why don't we just, get into those? So a little bit of a question in the air yet, but I think A1 South is a good start.
The question I have is, this is a mixed-use development over the next 5 or 6 years.
Yes.
And until you get to H1, there's very little mixed.
Well, included.
And the economics can change over the next few years, and suddenly what was a mixed use is no longer mixed use, it's all apartments. That's happened in some of our other developments, and I don't want to start out with that potential looking at us.
G1 is very much in our phase one, and I think it's
yeah, I see it there,
G1,
but it's
again,
also primarily residential usage as opposed to, now there is some public space in there, but a very small piece of public space compared to your whole development.
We'd be delighted to have somebody take H1 immediately. And that can happen.
I know it can, but I mean, you're asking us to prove a mixed-use development, which until something happens, and it's a relatively small portion that is non-residential to start with, and the largest piece of that non-residential is not on the immediate books to do something about. And that causes me concern in a long-term development where the economy can change, as we all know.
Right, and I just want to make sure I emphasize G1 is going to be actually predominantly community-based, not, so the amount that's dedicated just for resident usage will be limited. It might just be the locker and bathroom areas for the spool area, but the community room will be a community access event space, and then the balance of the building will be hopefully a restaurant or a couple of restaurants in there.
Which is about 7,000 square feet out of 300,000 square foot.
Oh, yes, in terms of
Potential
the overall,
development,
yes,
so
yes,
it's a
yes.
small piece of the action.
Right.
And I understand that will be there, but overall, it doesn't look very mixed unless it develops out as you've got planned, and we all hope it develops the way it's planned, but changes happen. That's it.
And one more bite at the apple?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so if I understand right, the total commercial square footage is, of the proposed development is about a third of the current commercial space, and a big chunk of that commercial space is the empty supermarket. In the traffic analysis, supermarket wasn't chosen, so you don't clearly envision that as an option, but what do you think are the prospects of grocery or a smaller retail like that can provide some of those services in this kind of a complex? Does that happen? Is it someplace?
When we talked to Pine Village, we've talked about things like a pharmacy or a small grocer. Again, they're thrilled with that. And we would be too, because it would be, again, a walkable amenity. There are a lot of restaurants in the area. I don't think it has to be a restaurant, so I think it's going to be something that, those kinds of uses are going to like the idea of being on a corner and having a lot of visibility. They're also going to like the idea of having kind of a resident population there that can walk to their services. So I think we definitely encourage that.
Thanks.
I was having difficulty following some of the development. Is there any non-residential space on the ground floor of the multi-story buildings?
Yes, but it would be resident. So the leasing office, a fitness center that would be usable by the residents.
Okay.
So I think those will be kind of engaging the corner and, kind of making that building feel a little bit more as a mixed use versus just purely residential.
Yeah, because you're trying to build a community here, not just a bunch of houses.
Correct.
Or a bunch, yeah. So part of the mixed use, even though it may not be public mixed use, is within the buildings themselves.
Correct.
Okay. Let me ask one more question that just jumped out. This gets back to the Pica. This really is a proposed dramatic change to the population nature of that area. Is it really likely that you're going to be able to fill this? I mean, what's the total number of residential units that you're actually building?
290 units. The market studies show the demand is there, so
Okay.
Ideally, I think they're not interested in doing it unless they know that there's a market there. So I think, I think the other thing is that the townhomes was identified as a very desirable product. Having good, strong amenities. The idea is and the walkability. The idea is to bring in families, especially, that you've got the ability to kind of just have the kinds of things that will both attract them and keep them there, and have them stick around. So I think right now the market supports this, and even more obviously in the community. But
Well, let me ask you, and I don't think I'm asking for any trade secrets or anything, but what is the nature of the community that you anticipate growing there? You're a little bit far from the MSU campus. I wouldn't expect that the majority of these will be occupied by students. So what is the nature of the population you expect to be moving into this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I got a couple thoughts on that. The first thought is the rental market isn't that different than the buying market right now. If you go to, my daughter actually lives in Elevation. And so we were there right before this. And, you have older adults living there choosing to rent. You have young adults. She's a vet student, but you don't have a lot of students. I don't suspect, we are not building this for students. We don't have makeup for students. We're not doing 4 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms student housing. We're doing 1, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom townhouses. It doesn't work well for student housing. So that would not be our intent. We did have a market study done. easily supports this project. It supports the mix that we have. As you know, the occupancy rates pretty much in the whole state of Michigan right now, you're at 100%. And that's not a healthy market for the community. And so I think it's only 290 units in a big community like Hazlet, and we're pretty confident we can fill that. Getting back to your commercial a little bit, I also had a little thought is I think we're proposing about the same amount of commercial as currently is being filled there right now. So I think we've proven
that's a plus.
So I think we fully understand where you're going, but we're going to enhance that area with more residential people. So I think we can draw a little more commercial there, but not a lot. And when you start talking about grocery stores, the problem you have is you have a Whole Foods, you have a Meijer, there's a reason why this corner is vacant right now, and it's probably a good reason. It's just it moved on to somewhere else, and I think the next use is kind of what we're suggesting here.
Well, don't get me wrong. I think this is a great project, and I'm
Yeah.
excited to have someone come in and say, we want to use that property that's been underutilized for years. So,
Yeah, and I think we envision, that use, and, we'd love to have a pub come in and want the corner and start talking about outdoor seating. We'd love to have a coffee shop or a, pub come into the middle section and, start talking about, that use. So I think we're going to have fun with it, and I think we'll be a good use there.
Any other questions or?
Talked about variety and different rental. How about affordability?
I think affordability is partly why we're having different scales of units so that we can have some studios that would be a lower price point. And then we have different sizes of ones. Studios tend to be a little bit more transient, so we don't want a lot of studios. Ones tend to have a little bit more longevity of leases. So, but we want to have different scales of ones so that we've got some ones that are lower priced and some ones that are higher priced, again, depending on the amenities. And then we get into 2s and 3s. So, so we're trying to address affordability by just having different scales of units that are available under the rent, with different rent points.
I was just wondering about affordable housing per se in that development, if it's nearly 300 units, 290.
Well, we'll have some rents that are, below AMI just because of the size of the units. But if you're talking about like affordability in the state's definition, like MSHA or something, we're not planning like MSHA type finance units, no.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a ballpark price point for, say, a 2-bedroom that you could?
Yes.
I mean, so that,
I would say that, and I.
Jack, you can step up.
Yes, the answer is yes. I mean, we've got our pro formas that we've got built up. I think if you, and I just don't have that pro forma here, and I've got a lot of numbers in my head. Similar to elevation, I would say is our target. We probably will have to be a little bit more than that, but and that's for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. Mike and I talked about comps from elevation. I don't know that they have anything even listed for a 1-bedroom because they're mostly full. Yeah. So.
It's something we can follow up on at the next meeting.
thank you.
Yep.
My assumption is that the question of the 5 years and possible changes, my assumption is while you're saying we're going to do one approval for the whole deal, is that what you said?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Will there not still be a process, an approval process as the project goes? I mean, don't they still have to submit as it comes along?
So the site plan still has to get approved internally, and they'll obviously have to get building permits and all that, but fundamentally, from a broader perspective, I think the intention is to have an umbrella approval of the MUPUD, and then the site plan will come in under that, and that's done administratively.
So if there is a substantial change in what we approve, then that brings it back. Am I not-
If it meets the definition of a major amendment under the ordinance that was adopted, then it will.
So isn't that doesn't that, in a sense, answer the longevity question?
To some extent, it does. It's something that we can explain. We'll follow up and explain it a little further in terms of what, since this is a new ordinance, what would trigger that and what would bring it back.
I had a kind of a nitpicky question. Building A1. Can I ask why yellow? It's quite bright. I don't know if this is an accurate depiction, but just why yellow?
It's a color that usually is associated with a more welcoming gesture, actually. So our front building, we chose yellow, but it could be a different color. But it's
Nothing against yellow, just
actually
curious.
it does have some meaning. So
I mean, it's bright and vibrant, and
Right.
I'm just curious.
it tends to be one of those colors that doesn't get people agitated. Or, I mean, it just happens to be a good color.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
If you're going to ask a nitpicky question, I will too. When you talk about synthetic siding, board and batten, what do you mean by synthetic siding?
We're looking at potentially either vinyl products or metals, potentially. We're not using real wood painted. It just happens to be, again, they've got decades of having to maintain this stuff. So great thing is there's wonderful synthetics out there. A lot of it's in the details, how you trim out windows and things like that. But I think the idea is to create enduring buildings that look fresh and don't require a lot of people kind of keeping up to them. So I think that's what we're looking at.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? No? Yeah, are there any public comments in? Sir?
Thank you.
I missed how he did this.
I'll take care of it for you, sir. Thank you.
While we're waiting for that to come up, if it doesn't come up right away.
Excuse me, sir.
I'm sorry,
You've
Neil
already
Bowlby.
introduced yourself, but do it
Sorry,
again
Neil
for the
Bowlby,
record.
6020 Beechwood, Hazlet. Oh, there it is. Okay, then I can jump right into it. One comment, though, the reason that property has languished for so long is not because of its not marketability, it's because of reluctance of the owners to lease space on the property. The township spent a lot of time with Horrocks to get a Horrocks in there, but that fell through because the owners didn't want to lease property. Okay, so you brought up the Hazlet Pica from the 2017 master plan. This is it. And just as the project shows, this envisions the housing being here, a little bit over on Hazlet Road, with commercial interspersed throughout. The Pica calls for about 87,000 square feet of retail and 320 housing units. This was in 2017. After the master plan came out, there wasn't a lot of movement to develop that property, and in 2019, the township board paid $25,000 to have a market study done of both of the three Picas, one for Okemos and one for Hazlet, the two Picas in Hazlet, which was this one, the Hazlet Village Square area, as well as the Carriage Hills area. And that study showed for housing units a maximum of 347 with a minimum, a low estimate of 37. This is for both areas in Hazlet. 141,000 square feet of retail, 62 to 141,000, and 17,000 to 40,000 of office space. Now keep in mind that that's for both areas of Hazlet, both the Carriage Hills and, well, okay. So you're asking about what gets built when. So rather than having to look at that chart, this was the first part to get built, the community center and these buildings. The second part is over here. The third part, phase 5, is down here, and the last thing to get built is the townhouses. Regarding the retail building, which you did bring up, there was no mention of that in the phasing plan or the building plan. And in fact, in there was an application made to the Meridian Redevelopment Fund to help pay for some of this infrastructure. And in that application, they were asked, will the project be leased or sold at completion? And this is from their application. It says the corner site may be built to suit and leased or sold. So your concern about that not ever being built is a good one, and I think you should do something to ensure that that gets built, maybe in the second building part of the project, because as you pointed out, that's only 7,000 square feet for the community center, which is 2.7% of the total square foot of the project. The units changed in their amended proposal here. The number of units changed back to 290, but the actual number of beds went up from 423 to 449 beds. That's a better estimate of the number of people that will actually be in that area. And if you add that to the 155 beds proposed for Pine Village, talking about 604 bedrooms in this little compact area. That's getting pretty intense, I think. And to call that a walkable community, I think, is really a misnomer. I don't know what's meant by walkable. In the sense, I envision walkable community as meaning you don't have to get in your car and drive to get basics. Maybe walkable community just means it has sidewalks and pretty streets and people can walk around it feeling comfortable, but I have a different idea of what walkable community means. Just a couple of other things, and I know I'm going to run out of time, but the first person, when Lynn Page was here, I think she went for 5 minutes or so, and I do have a couple other important things. And I'm glad that Commissioner Cordell brought up about affordable housing, because that's something the township should have been built into the MUPUD plan, that there be affordable housing. There's a definite need for affordable housing in the township by Michigan's definition of whatever it is, % of the poverty level, that it should be affordable for people. And accessible, handicap accessible. Now I know that Pine Village is a senior living facility, but some people might not be able to afford to live there. And so to have accessible apartments on the first floor, I think is a good thing. One technical question is about the traffic. I know you can't see this, so I'll just talk my concern about it. The staff report says that a traffic study, and I confirm this by going on the township's website and looking at their code of ordinances, for an MUPUD, a traffic study, and my understanding of the difference, a traffic analysis is what they have to do here to determine whether a traffic study is needed. The ordinance says that a traffic study is required when there are more than 100 trips during the peak hour. And according to the chart that they provided, I think it was 181 trips in the AM peak and 125 trips in the PM peak. So, and the staff concluded that a traffic study was not required. So I guess I have a question about that I hope will get answered.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, 10 seconds. I'm in favor of this. I think Hazlet needs it. It's not a big community. Hazlet is not a big community, but it can certainly absorb something, maybe not quite this big in combination with Pine Village, but the idea of redeveloping that site is important and hopefully will revitalize the rest of downtown Hazlet.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Okay. I guess there's somebody on.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just briefly, I know that Neighborhood and Economic Development Director Clark is here this evening, and while she's walking up, if you'd indulge her a moment, I would just like to clarify Mr. Boldy's point on the traffic study. It's really a comparison between the existing and proposed, and what you're looking at is an increase of only 45 trips in the AM and actually a decrease in the PM. So it does not rise to the requirement of a full traffic study. However, to the point, we are trying to get good information, and so that's why we've asked them to clarify the information to be consistent with the proposal.
Very good, thank you.
Good evening, Amber Clark, 1348 Bayshore Drive, Economic Development Director for Meridian Township. I want to speak very quickly to the project. We've been working with the Lake Drive Group since probably last May on this mixed-use component. I previously sat on the Planning Commission and did think hard on the mixed use, especially the mixed part being the residential part comes easy. How do we confirm the commercial? And that has been something that's difficult on some of these projects. So I think working with Director Schmidt and their team, the community planning team, we are working really hard with the developer to attract them to commercial operators. So we have taken a different kind of direction when we are working with developers on proposed concept plans, especially mixed use. We are either recommending to a developer that has the experience or we know that they have the power behind them to do a commercial project to tackle one. We wouldn't recommend this if we didn't really think that the Bosgraf Group and Lake Drive Group could pull off the mixed use portion of the project. So something that I do in my day job as a part of helping facilitate this through our approval process is to try to match them up with commercial operator that would be able to take this and to make this a full, wholesome community project for everybody. So I just want to reiterate that to you, that that's something else that we've done as a part of efficient development process to get the mix of the MUPUD. And anything else I could say is I wish every project came to us like this, because it's very difficult. Everything in the township used to be a laundromat or a gas station. Guess what? This has 2 laundromats on it. And so we have an additional issue for redevelopment. So I can't speak highly enough of this team, but also to say that this is meeting all of our Disneyland wish for the Pica. I want to refer to the Pica being all 4 corners. And so it is a very large area to concentrate massive amount of commercial, especially in this market. Breaking up commercial in this kind of way is a financial lending opportunity for developers in 2022. It's not, 1980 when we're putting this in. We're in an entire different market and a different lifestyle. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Director.
I'm afraid Director Schmidt reminded me of a question I have been scratching my head over.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah. An overall decrease of 120 trips at the PM peak.
It's a huge commercial center. I mean, it would be expected that shopping center, if it was full, would be generating a large amount of traffic in the PM peak.
So the decrease is over what we would expect were that still a grocery store.
Correct. It's a comparison between the existing land use and the future land use. And that's how you do a traffic analysis. And while I understand it's been vacant for a number of years, this is sort of the standard of how you do an ITA analysis.
Yeah. And we've talked a little bit about whether our standards take into account the context and what kind of street you're putting traffic onto and off of. But, and I understand that the manual says, okay, there was potentially a grocery store there, it could be an operation, there's all this other, but to the common person who comes at this and hears that we're going to build a whole bunch of buildings and we're going to have 100 less cars a day than we currently have, that doesn't make the slightest bit of sense. Just so we understand that this isn't a decrease in existing traffic, it's a decrease in potential traffic if that grocery store were in operation and all the other businesses there. So let's not put too much weight on the notion that there's going to be a decrease in the current traffic, is my point.
On the other hand, if the developers want to attract commercial, they have to have the traffic flow. Otherwise, it's a waste of space.
Well, yeah, taking a derelict shopping center and putting 2 new drive-throughs in and having a decrease in traffic, that's just a non sequitur. It just doesn't, I understand the way the system is set, we're reverting to but I wish we had a different way to do this. I look forward to doing this a different way.
Anyone else?
So we've got a lot of things to follow up on. We will work with the applicant in the next couple. I'm going to try and get a meeting with the architect tomorrow, actually, and start on this list.
That was going to be my suggestion to the chair, is that rather than take a straw vote at this point, we wait till the next meeting to get some further information and then proceed then from a straw vote and go forward.
I agree with that. There are just too many questions that have to be answered.
I'd also like to suggest we've almost been at this for 2.5 hours, and some of us are old people.
Point well taken.
Which means there are other kinds of needs that come up after 2.5 hours.
Just a matter of process. Once this is a recommendation we're going to be making to the township board then?
Correct.
Okay, so we do have to keep that in mind also, so we get a timely movement through.
Depending on how close we are to being done.
Well, there's still several things after the public hearings, other business and reports. Let's, the record should reflect it's now 9:27. We are closing item 7C. Why don't we take a 10-minute break for the older people?
Wait a minute.
Including me.
That's not me.
I can always use that.
I was thinking that about 9 o'clock.
I'm not saying we would never do that, but it's not.
Not your district.
I used to, well, I was going to see and we would there used to be a terrific team. I would have, our boss. And there we go. It's been gone for years and all you have to do is put your power and sell it and we're in. I want that bagel factory back. Aside from that, everything
Yeah, they used to be in both bagel shops.
Yeah.
Right.
No, this was you.
has notified us that their comprehensive plan update is available, is located at this link. There's no need to discuss it this evening, but under the state law, they're required to provide us notice. They have provided that notice. At the next meeting, we will work on drafting a letter of any comments that staff has, and if the planning commission has any as well, and we will move on. So in the interim, if you have a chance to look it over and you have any comments, just shoot us a note. Okay?
Does it require notice to contiguous townships? Is that what it is, or?
Yes, along with utilities and railroads, and there's a number of things noted in the state enabling legislation.
Okay.
Is it like a 60-day comment period?
45? 45. So no action is needed on this evening. We just wanted to get it to you, so if you can look it over.
Oh, I'm sorry, item 9B?
Item 9B, under Michigan enabling legislation, the Meridian Township is one of the communities where one of the members of the Planning Commission also serves on the Zoning Board of Appeals. That position was previously held by Mr. Hendrickson, Commissioner Hendrickson, prior to his appointment to the Board of Trustees. So we do need the Planning Commission to appoint a member to the Zoning Board of Appeals. We meet once a month on the third Wednesday, and you're getting new standards of review for the next meeting.
2 questions. Is there a plan in the board's near future to replace Mr. Henderson? Number 1, and number 2, what time of the day does the meeting take place?
ZBA meets at 6:30 in the evening on Wednesdays.
Okay.
I have not spoken to Supervisor Jackson recently about the appointment to the Planning Commission. I'm certain that she is working on it because it is the most high profile of the volunteer boards.
But 6:30 in the evening?
6:30 in the evening is the ZBA's meeting time on the
That's
third
helpful.
Wednesday.
Well, let me just ask this, is there anybody on the commission currently who wants to volunteer for that position?
If I could get off my 8 o'clock meeting on the board that I'm currently on, I would go to a 6:30 meeting.
I'm happy to look into how that could work, if that's the direction of the board.
I'm currently on the BRA committee. I would do that, but I won't do both.
Okay.
The 8 o'clock in the morning is not as desirable as the 6:30 in the evening.
Now, the DDA board meets at 7:30 in the morning.
Same with the EC.
Yeah.
We will look into that option for the next meeting for the Planning Commission. So everyone think about who wants to take the BRA if Mr. Primo takes the ZBA.
Very good, thank you.
I'd be willing to do the BRA.
Okay, let me work through the machinations of how that would work, and next meeting we'll swap it.
Okay.
Very good, thank you.
I bring that up. If anybody else feels stronger about it, I mean, that I'm not,
It's probably why Commissioner Hendrickson asked to get off this board in the first place. 'Cause
We're trying to make the ZBA easier, I swear.
All right, so now we're on item 9C, which is municipal signage.
This is the last item I have this evening. The sign ordinance is moving along quite nicely. I will be in touch with the members of the subcommittee to schedule a meeting in the very near future to hopefully finalize a draft. However, the municipal sign update project has all of a sudden got roller skates, and it's going to get ahead of me. So I need to catch up. And so what I'm proposing and what we will bring forward to the Planning Commission for public hearing at one of the next meetings is to bring forward the change to section 696 ahead of the remainder of the sign ordinance. And what that does is to exempt the township from the sign ordinance. This is largely because the signs that we put out are not signs, they're not advertising signs. Technically, the land preserves shouldn't have signs under the ordinance. Technically, we will be unable to do the replacement sign projects out here because we're trying to say where the police department is and where the Nokomis Learning Center is and where City Township Hall is all on the same sign. It just doesn't work. Signage for municipalities are generally more health, safety, welfare type signs than advertising signs. And so we are proposing this, we will be bringing forward this amendment. The sign subcommittee did not seem to have a major concern with this section and try and get this piece done in advance of the wholesale review of the sign ordinance, which is coming at you very quickly.
If I read this correctly, what you're doing is deleting the current language and just substituting, saying this doesn't apply to the township.
Correct.
Okay.
There is an exception to that. Any change of message sign still requires planning commission approval. So you will see potential change of message signs for township hall
okay,
in the near future.
The electronic signs?
Yes.
Okay.
On that topic, I notified people of what I learned as a liaison to the Downtown Development Authority, and that is that the township is considering buying signs to assist businesses that are disrupted by the construction on Grand River.
Correct. That is actually going to fall under a different section of the new sign ordinance, but yes, we are proposing to do that going forward sort of with any quote-unquote major construction project as defined by the township.
I think it's an excellent idea, but it's a good reason why it would be an exempt from control type situation.
We tend to agree.
Temporary in nature.
Yes.
Temporary in nature.
Yes. Good.
Yeah, one of the things that kind of surprised me when I first moved to the township and got involved in the business here is that all of the township's property is zoned residential. There's, in a lot of governmental units, there's a government zoning, which then talks to signage, has its own. But here, if you think about it, I mean, signs are very, very, very restrictive in residential zoning. But this property here that we're sitting on is residentially zoned because there is no other, it's a use allowed in residential zoning, but that's part of the challenge of why the sign ordinance really doesn't, I mean, part of it, not the whole thing, but part of why the sign ordinance doesn't really fit government use because of its residential zoning. Anyway.
All right, I believe we are now on item 10A, Township Board update.
Main update that we have is the township board has had an initial discussion about the 6 ordinance amendments / rezoning requests that the planning commission has sent forward. They generally have no major concerns with any of them. We'll be introducing 4 of them tomorrow night. The rezoning for Becky Bosch and Colca, the Lake Lansing lot coverage, Lake Lansing setbacks, and the change to the ZBA standards. The 3 next we'll bring forward at one of the next meetings, the decks, the fence, and the deletion of the RRR district. And then we're going to keep this train chugging. We have a couple more we're prepping to bring forward. So we're going to start eating an elephant with one bite. So we're definitely chomping away at this. That is the main update on the township board. Has certainly been very busy with the Daniels Drain project and will continue to be so. But these are the main items related to the planning commission.
Thank you. Do we have any liaison reports?
I'm just going to tell you that being on the BRA commission or committee will be easier on you because they often don't meet. So that's good news for you.
You say that, they're going to get
That's
so
true of the
busy this
zoning
year.
board of appeals, too.
Is that a report or a complaint? I'm not sure.
No, that's
a remark.
That's not a complaint. That was a report. We did not meet. We haven't met for the last couple.
Any other liaison reports?
Transportation Commission meets in May, and we haven't met since March, so that's why I've been quiet.
Okay. Well, then we are now on number 11, project updates. Any new applications?
We haven't got anything new recently. We've got a lot of stuff matriculating, but nobody's pulled the trigger.
How about site plans received or approved?
Nothing. From an approval perspective, we're wrapping up loose ends on third phase of elevation, the totally, we swear it's not Trader Joe's building, there's a lot of loose ends that we're trying to wrap up so that they can get under construction here.
The record should reflect for item number 12, which is the final public remarks, that we don't have members. I don't think a reporter is going to be making public remarks, so. Okay. So there is no member of the public here for public remarks. Therefore, we are on item 13, which is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Make that motion.
All right, second? Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
No opposition. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.